Good afternoon, everyone. Can you hear my voice?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay, fine. Just wait for some minutes. Okay?
afternoon all. I am Priyanka Kundu, Assistant Professor of Computer Application Department. I would like to welcome you all for today's webinar. Eminent College of Management and Technology is run by the Trust Nirmala Foundation that is being founded with the aim to provide quality education. We are determined to create academic excellence and a global campus culture that prepares students to fulfill their academic, professional, and social goals. ECMT is affiliated with MACOUT, formerly known as WBUT, is one of the renowned university in West Bengal. ECMT offers Bachelor's of Computer Application, Bachelor's of Business Administration, B Optometry, and MSc Computer Science course, and all the courses are affiliated by MACOUT. Eminent group of college has been participated several social events throughout the year. This year, we have also organized Amphan Relief Camp in several areas. Now, I request Mr. Orithro Kundu to show the clips. Yes, Orithro. Okay, thank you, Orithro. So our today's topic of the webinar is trends in digital economy in the post-COVID-19 society. In the present situation, we are facing a global health crisis. The COVID-19, which had been characterized as a pandemic by World Health Organization, has accelerated the adoption of digital technologies and services, which have kept trade flowing even as movement has been restricted. Now, I would like to request all the students to attend the session, and at the end of the session, you will be given some feedback form, and submitting the form will ensure you to get e-certificate. Now, I would like to request the chairman of the webinar, our Vice Principal Sir, Mr. Surojit Gun, to share few words.
Thank you, Priyanka. Hello, good afternoon to all our guests and participants. I welcome you all to this webinar on trends in digital economy in the post-COVID-19 society, organized by Eminent College of Management and Technology, Kolkata. As a Vice Principal of this college, I would like to congratulate all my faculty members for arranging such a lovely event. I am also thankful to our speaker, Mr. Abhijan Bhattacharya, for giving us his valuable time. He is presently serving as a scientist in TCS Research and has great experience and expertise in this field. So, I am sure it is going to be an excellent session. This is our second official webinar, so I request all participants to cooperate with us and make this webinar a success. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. So today, we are extremely honored to have an eminent personality with us, Mr. Abhijan Bhattacharya, who is presently serving as a scientist in TCS Research, Tata Consultancy Services, Kolkata, India. He has been serving the industry for 16 years. His current areas of interest are network protocols for IoT, low latency communication for Industry 4.0, 5G, etc. He has authored several peer-reviewed international publications and has granted patents in multiple geographies. He has played a lead role in representing his organization in Internet Engineering Task Force. He has co-authored the first ever indigenous internet standard form in the form of RFC 7967. He has been awarded with IETF fellowship several times under the Next Gen Leadership Program of Internet Society. I welcome Mr. Abhijan Bhattacharya to share his thought on this topic. Thank you.
Thank you very much. My special thanks to the Vice Principal, Mr. Surajit Goon. By the way, I hope I'm audible. If someone can please respond if I'm audible.
Yes, sir, you are audible.
Yes, sir, you are.
Okay, thanks a lot. So my special thanks to Mr. Surajit Goon, who has been a great friend of mine since my school days. So it's really an honor to be with students and faculties, because this is a place where the future belongs, future of the nation. So today, what I'm trying to share my screen. Let me. Are you able to see the first page of the presentation? Can someone please respond?
Yes, sir, we can.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Yeah. Thanks for confirming. So, see, this is not going to be a highly technical session, but it will be more of a technical sensitization to generate interest amongst the students and also amongst the maybe some of the faculties who may be involved in research activities. I'm primarily I deal with internet protocols, so most of the discussions will be on how to deal with internet protocols and is COVID-19 giving us anything special? Does it demand anything special from us, or is it something that we were already doing, and we have got a bigger societal cause to fast track that scientific or technological development? So, if I start, so human civilization, there are some basic fundamental understanding. We are Homo sapiens and we are social animals, right? And being social is the essential precondition for human civilization, human societies. Because if you look in this famous knowledge pyramid, how we become civilized is through collaboration, right? So data is basically what we sense through our sense organs. And from the sense organs, we churn out information. And then we exchange that information with others. That gives us knowledge. Then we exchange with a larger community, and that gives us wisdom. So without wisdom, the society cannot progress. So the fundamental thing is that you need to share. And that is where, so if I don't know cooking and somebody knows cooking, I'll get to know about cooking. I'll share the recipe with someone else. And then things will mature, things will improve. That's a very naive example. And think about fire. I mean, when mankind first, somebody, some corner of this world in a jungle, he or she uh, was able to create fire. Okay. And then that knowledge got percolated. Wheels, invention of wheels. That knowledge got percolated. And based on that knowledge, now we have got these outstanding vehicles roaming around, right? There has been so many innovations, but it started with one man having some experience that you can call an information. He shared that knowledge, he shared that, and that built up a book of knowledge. From that, you got, there was a wisdom, and then you develop. That is how human society progresses. So, but the, this pandemic has put us in a paradox situation. What is that paradox? Is that, I mean, civilization cannot stop, right? If civilization will stop, the pandemic will cease to have any treatment. So we have to maintain, we have to be social in the interest of carrying out the civilization, in the interest of the kind of the way of living we are used to, but we have to also be non-social in the form of we have to maintain distance, right? So that is why what you'll see is that you no longer have the kind of conference gathering that you are seeing at the bottom, and you have these virtual meetings that you can see at the top, right? So because this has a lot of connotations, anything that needs people to come together physically is going to be avoided, right? But at the same time, life must go on, civilization must go on. So there has to be a technological solution, because we are not living in the ages of mythology where sitting at one corner, some saint can turn things around on the other corner of the globe. This is a real world, right? And we have to do something to mitigate this paradoxical situation. So basically, what we are heading at is something called Industry 4.0 at a fast track, right? So what is Industry 4.0? So one of the, there are many interpretation of that. So let me chew on this topic a little bit. See, when you say Industry 4.0, basically what we mean is fourth industrial revolution. So what is said is the world is at the verge of the fourth industrial revolution. So fourth industrial revolution, what is the first industrial revolution? So the industrial revolution in the 19th century that originated in Europe. So it made us it made us invent outstanding mechanical machines, right? And human society had a progress based on those initial mechanics, had a progress in a never seen before kind of pace. But what then fourth revolution means what? The fourth revolution is essentially dealing with a digital world which we have not done before. So we have been through the electronics, with the era of electronics, right? We have got outstanding electronic machines. We have got televisions. We have got a lot of electronic appliances. Even now we have got smartphones. That is what many of you might be using right now for this conference. Then what is Industry 4.0? In the fourth industrial revolution, what the community is talking about is to unleash to whatever knowledge we have gathered so far over, say, last 100 years, or especially in the last 3-4 decades. Okay, you assimilate all those knowledge, right? You assimilate all those knowledge and create an environment in which machine does not replace human, but machine augments human effort and to create possibilities never seen before. If you look into the right corner of this, left corner of this slide, so what you see is basically a robot is going to handle something. Now, this is something that we have already seen, but this robot is being controlled by someone at a very remote place on other part of the world, right? And this is highly real time. You know what is real time? Real time means there has to be a strict deadline by which you need to finish a task. So just try to extend this example, try to extend your imagination. Now, these small things can be extrapolated to many possibilities. You may ask that what is the big deal? We have internet communication. I'll come to that. What is the big deal? Okay. So, to as much as having a critical operation done by an expert sitting at one end to a rural patient, okay, who is sitting maybe in somewhere in some village in Africa or in somewhere in India. Just imagine somebody from one of the super specialty hospitals in Calcutta is operating a patient sitting, lying in the operation theater somewhere in, say, in the villages of Murshidabad or Malda or wherever. Now you try to appreciate the criticality of this thing. If, God forbid, I drop off in this conference, I can again join. The casualty is minimal. Okay? It is not question of somebody's life and death. But try to think of such a situation. If there is an outage of connectivity, or if there is a delay in the network, sometimes you see that in WhatsApp or in any VoIP application, you are speaking, but you're chatting with your friend, but your friend is hearing or responding with a bit of delay. That is because the network has got some congestion at that point of time, and it has got some delay in the signal being transferred. Because we have to understand the complexity of the communication medium in between. Now, everywhere I go, I tell students a very common example. See, we all use electricity, right? Everybody has electricity right now, at least those participating in this webinar. Everybody has electricity. Now, if there is a fault, even a layman has some idea of what is the failure point. So if your bulb is not lighting up, so you have some known failure points. You need not be an electrical engineer. Either the bulb may be faulty, the filament, or these days it is LED. Okay, so there may be some fault in the bulb itself. The switch may be faulty. The main switch may be faulty. Something has just blown up. The fuse might have just blown up. Then you know that there is this meter box. Some loose connection may happen there. From there, you have got the distribution box at the transformer. Finally, there is the local power station, and from there is the grid, which is the distributing across your region, right? Everybody has, even if he is not too very educated, even if he is illiterate. I mean, just imagine when this cyclone happened. Everybody had the idea that what are the possible causes for which supply was not coming. Everybody knew that this is the point. He may not be an engineer, but these are in popular thoughts. Now imagine the situation. You are watching a video in Netflix, you are watching a video in YouTube, or you are having a chat with your friend, or you are watching some live game, and you suddenly see there's a stall. But you see your tower is full. I mean, it is showing the signal strength is full, yet nothing is coming. We are consuming data probably more consciously than we are consuming electricity. Or even there may be times when you are not consuming any electricity at all. Your fans, lights, everything is switched off, yet you are consuming data. But the question is, even if I'm studying computer engineering, I'm studying information technology, I'm studying electrical or electronics engineering, do I have enough idea about what might have gone wrong, which or the phenomena that is not allowing me to watch the movie or the program or the chat? What is the cause that is disturbing? Do I know all these failure points? In most cases, the answer is vague, very vague. Not everybody has an idea that what is really going wrong. The reason is we take internet as granted, right? And we never assume, we think that internet finishes between the access point or the mobile tower and my device. It is not like that. It is far complex ecosystem, right? So when I talk about, even if I think about that somebody sitting, one specialist doctor sitting somewhere wants to do, sitting somewhere in some super specialty hospital in Kolkata, wants to do an operation somewhere at Murshidabad. I mean, it's a scary proposition at this point. There is a question of life and death. Nobody would agree. But imagine, I know many situations, many of my friends, my acquaintances, who had to postpone the operation because the doctor did not want to come closer to the patient. And at times, the patient got afraid that if I go to a Calcutta hospital, if I get admitted into a Calcutta hospital, I might catch up the pandemic virus. So this is the typical situation where you need to come close. You are compelled to come close. But the essential condition for maintaining the distance is not enough.
Hello. Abhijan sir, please check your presentation. I think it stopped.
Sound is not coming at all. The presentation is stopped.
Right? You have to remember one point, which is we are all talking about the public internet. It is not a dedicated line, because if you really want to democratize this service, if you really want that this service, this kind of services must reach to the grassroots level, to the poor, we cannot demand dedicated networks because operators charge a huge cost for that, and for that you need to have this infrastructure. Maybe not all rural health centers may not have that. They can address.
Sir,
Yeah. Hello.
sorry to interrupt you, sir. Sir, your slide is not visible properly.
Okay, but is it visible now?
No, sir. No, sir.
Okay.
Actually, it is visible, but I think rotation must be needed.
Yeah, it's too small.
Is it?
Rotation,
Okay.
mobile rotation is
Just-
needed.
Okay,
Is it
sir.
visible now?
Yes, yes. Now it is
Yeah,
visible.
it's okay now.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. So now what is the quality of service that we are demanding from such things? See, I have taken this picture that you see at the bottom from a concept paper. It is a seminal paper that has given rise to a new kind of internet, innovations around a new kind of internet, which is called tactile internet. Tactile means touch. So an internet that can give you a real-time touch. Okay. So what are the delay parameters in real life scenario? If you want to kill a mosquito which is biting you, so the reaction time is about 1 second. You hear a music, the reaction time is about 100 milliseconds. Eye blinks, you want to see something and blink eyes, 10 milliseconds. But imagine if you want to drive a remote car, just consider the situations where somebody might just want to drive a car under the mine where the miners are trapped. If you want to drive a car, you saw between the steering wheel and the between the steering and the wheel, the reaction time is just 1 millisecond, and there can be further. If a ball is thrown to you and you want to catch it, the reaction time is around 625 microseconds. Can this internet guarantee today? Or is this internet as reliable as you want? Just like radio, you can always imagine that if you switch on the radio, there is a 99% probability that you would be able to, if this is a scheduled time of a program being broadcast, you can be 99% sure that you will be able to catch up with the station. Does today's data network have that kind of a guarantee? Even if the signals, in case of radio, even if the signal strength is weak, you may hear some noise, but still you can hear something. In case of data, if there is a degradation of the channel, can you guarantee that you can see through all the programs, everything? So these are few things that you need to ponder, right? And that is what is the fundamental of this realization of Business 4.0. So with this pandemic, necessity is mother of invention. So whatever was being invented, if yesterday people were saying that telesurgery, in the scale you are talking about is a luxury and is a sci-fi kind of thing, let's not do it right now. Today, if you tell a government official, they will say, can you deploy it right now? That is the situation. And that is what this pandemic has led the technology community to. Okay? So there has been a rapid, fast-track tendency towards towards enacting fourth industrial revolution, and all of the community have to get involved. So as I said, the essential matrix, the thing that holds the whole concept is the internet. And I was saying that internet is a very complex thing. and we are completely oblivion about. We use internet just being completely oblivious about. These days, you might think, okay, there is optical fiber that goes to my home because you see the fibers are laid down. But as I gave you the example of electricity, you have to understand one thing, that between electricity and internet, electrons are flowing. That is the similarity. In case of electric, electrons are flowing through the copper wire or any kind of conductive wire. In case of internet communication, there is also flow of electron. But the fundamental difference is electricity is fragmented. It is not a global thing. The internet is a global thing. When you switch on the light, you rely on the power generated some 100 miles maybe or 200 miles away, a power station. But when you are accessing, say, Washington Post or New York Times, or say you are watching some movie in Netflix, the content is not localized. So internet makes you a global citizen beyond boundaries, right? So internet was invented with some fundamental ideologies, which were the important of those ideologies were that there has to be a global ecosystem to share knowledge by anybody anywhere on earth. Okay. Now, to build such a global system, what is the essential communicating medium that gives you in seconds, you get what you want, at least for static pages, are the optical fibers that are laid across the seas, oceans, and continents. So there are landing stations in every country where the optical fibers are terminated. And that is essentially what is the web. That is the web that ties the whole world under the sea. So as you can see, there are plenty of intermediate nodes through which data has to flow. So when the data is going out or going to your premises, there is your ISP, there is your access point, there is your ISP, there is the BGP, Border Gateway Protocol, there are root servers, there are content delivery networks, there are end servers, there are data centers. So between the two ends, two communicating parties, there is this huge complexity. So apart from this physical infrastructure, there are standards. So when you are saying that I am using a 4G phone, you are essentially saying I am using a phone that abides by the standards laid down by 3GPP, Third Generation Partnership Project. When you say I am typing HTTP when I am browsing, basically you are telling the browser that for the communication that you are going to do, please use Hypertext Transfer Protocol. Okay. Now, why we need standards? These standards are required because you are talking about a global citizenship. For that, you need a common language. For example, what I am talking now is English, and you are understanding the words I am deliberating because I am sticking to the semantics of English language, and you are also, while trying to understand what I'm saying, you are also sticking to the syntax and semantics of English language. The same way, there will be hundreds of vendors, there will be hundreds of thousands of installations in all these hundreds of countries across the world. All of them have to be in sync in terms of representation of the data. And that is why you have these global standards called TCP, IP, then you have got HTML, HTTP, BGP, you have got DNS, and then you have got the standardized port numbers. You know, even if you are not a networking guy, but you know, I mean, HTTP uses port 80, right? So your infrastructure manager will tell you that, can you please set port 80 there, because that is the standardized port in which all HTTP communication must happen. So there needs to be a standard, right? Now, just to speak a little bit on the background of internet, because that is the fundamental of whatever digital or digital India or digital world or the self-reliance or whatever we are talking about, everything lies on this internet infrastructure. That is so where it all started with, as I said, there are certain philosophies between internet. So internet started back in during the time of the World War, where we started developing machines and computers, right? And then Alan Turing came up with the hypothetical theory on how to decide, how to say that whether a machine is as smart as a human being. And based on that, only today's artificial intelligence and everything has been built up. Okay, so the thought process that went into the back of the mind of many engineers is that, now coming back to the knowledge pyramid that I told you in some of the previous slides, is that to build a civilization, man needs to connect and exchange. Now, to build a machine-driven civilization, so that is where back in 1940s, the basis of business 4.0 started. If we really need machines to augment human and to enhance the capability, the reachability of human effort, we need machines which are computing at the place of human. They need to talk to each other. And that is where it all started, and it was propelled by the invention of packet switching. By 1960s, we already had the basic idea of how digital information can be segregated into packets and can be transferred through multiple paths. That is the basis of packet switch. You have the same information segmented in digital form. You can send them in multiple paths, and then you can reassemble them at the end point. And that is the fundamental of IP protocol. So the packet switching came into existence, and people then said, okay, let us say that if I can put some human readable, human understandable text, let us see if in the same form the text can be sent across the campuses, then across the two coastal areas of United States, and then it got spread across the Atlantic off to Europe, and then by 1980s it reached India, and we used to call it ARNet. It was back in 83, 84 that the primitive internet called ARNet started to come to India. Okay, so that time we didn't have anything called browser, the GUI and all these things. These things were as new as 1993, when there was a browser called Mosaic that came up, and this concept of World Wide Web or WWW as a service started to emerge, right? Now let us go to, we have talked about how internet is forming the essential component of digital economy. Now, when we talk about digital economy, what the other very important aspect is we are essentially talking about data. Just remember the knowledge pyramid in the previous slide. The society becomes smart because we sense data, either through our brain or our senses. We sense data and we share that. So in a mechanized world where machines are going to augment us, we have to fundamentally depend on data. So digital economy is nothing but a data-driven economy. And that is why you will see all the fuss that if you use Zoom, China is going to steal your data. Or, sorry, I'm not talking about any, I have no grudges against Zoom. Don't take me wrong. I'm just talking about the notifications that came from Minister of Human Resource, Government of India, right? So if you are using this app, say TikTok, your data is going to be stolen. If you are using Face app and you do some tampering in your face, they are actually getting the image for you. And what are they doing? They are feeding this data to bring new intelligence, and that is called artificial intelligence. Because for artificial intelligence, you need data with proper annotation. Without annotation, your algorithm will give wrong results, and that is a problem for people working in India in artificial intelligence because we do not have enough data. So as you tend to become away from each other, maintain distance socially, yet you have to remain social. You have to experience the other's mood, other situation, the what is the environment at the other end, or what can be predicted next. You have to rely on data. So data production, data distribution, data monetization. These are the three key pillars on which this digital economy is standing on. Data production means you have to create a system which would be able to generate data, produce data. For example, in these days, you will see the JCB machines. There are smart JCB machines which has got sensors in it. You will see in bridges, even in our Ultadanga, I know there is one organization, the bridge that fallen down, they have actually installed sensors to indicate health of the bridge. So you need to know how to generate data. And then you have to distribute that data. If you can't distribute that data, your data generation may not be equipped enough to have the intelligence to churn out what is the meaning of the data. Because to churn out the meaning of the data, remember the knowledge pyramid, you need to distribute the data amongst peers and to some central entities who would learn from all this data. And then on a commercial aspect, you can monetize the data. I can either, you can say that I have enough data, I can give you this data to run your algorithm, or you can say that, see, I based on data, I can run so many intelligent things which can improve your experience, your smartness, and you pay me money. Now, from students' perspective, if you see the left-hand diagram, I have taken it from one white paper that came out from United Nations. So they have this UNCTAD. They came up before this COVID pandemic, just months before this COVID pandemic, they came up with a paper in which they tried to find out what are the different technologies that are going to rule the next 2-3 decades. Okay. From students, you'll see that in this digital economy, these are some of the scopes. Let me enlarge it a little bit. So hardware manufacturing, software, IT, if you are in code engineering, right? Then based on those, you can create new courses, or if you are a teacher, or if you are an academician, if you are in academic industry. So you can create new courses or new studies on using those platforms. How can create new digital services for betterment of mankind, for betterment of businesses, and platform, and how can you create a new kind of an economy? And this is called internet economy. There is another term, and unfortunately I haven't seen much of a research here, but in China, in Finland, and in many places, I actually I had to deliver a talk back in 2017 in one of the government of India sponsored event, and for that I had to actually dig through the interpretation of internet economy, and then I was astonished that in China, in Finland, in Germany, in USA, there has been a huge work on how internet economy can change the shape of a country, the economy of a country. And one such example is Finland. Just because of investing in internet-based research and development and monetization plans, well-executed plans, Finland, from, if you look at where it was in the 80s and in the beginning of 90s and where it is now, it is one of the leading economy right now. And internet economy is a big booster. Okay. And when you go even a farther level, we already are doing few things. E-business, e-commerce is there. So industry 4.0 or business 4.0, the kind of use cases I said, and that can actually be extended to precision agriculture, because even in precision agriculture, you can actually monitor the crops based on artificial intelligence, based on data on the weather gathered, based on health of the crop in the surrounding regions gathered. Maybe the field that you are where you have a farm, maybe that has not got a some insects or something, but maybe you get the data that there are other regions from where there is a tendency which is a bit anomalous, a tendency is being displayed. So let us be cautious. And we are seeing that there is an increasing spread of this tendency. We don't yet know whether this is a disease of the crops, but yes, this is something unusual. We still don't know this thing, and these are the possible situations in which such and such things are happening. There is a commonality. Let us be cautious. These things can be done if you have smart agriculture. Again, based on the soil quality, based on the nature of the soil, you can decide precisely what is the amount of water that you are going to serve, etc. So that can give you a smart agrarian society.
Vijay, sir,
yes.
Sorry to interrupt you. Sir, please share your screen once.
Are you not able to see it?
No, it stopped.
Just hold on. Are you able to see now, or is still there's a problem? Let me present it once again. Okay.
Yes. Actually,
Yes.
one
Okay.
student actually entered adaptive as well.
Do you see it?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
It's visible.
Yeah. So this is how you have a economy built on data collection, data distribution, and also data monetization. So today, I would really urge academicians to come forward to talk about, even I had a talk with people from IIM. They are also not, I haven't received, maybe there is a dearth of communication from my side, but I haven't received enough interest in this regard. But when we are talking about digital India, when we are talking about this, all these self-reliance and all these things, we have to also have a technical mind plus an economic mind doing case studies on how internet economy can benefit, because we have a huge depth in terms of layers of economic capabilities in our country. We have a huge depth in terms of the deprivation. So a well thought of internet economy can actually lead to a better economic revival of the country, and you can actually create a collaborative economy, because cooperation is much more easier with the internet infrastructure, right? And many people are actually doing unknowingly. We need to do them in a structured fashion. So any techno economic activity in this regard would be far more welcome. Anybody wants to do a kind of research which is not purely technical, but there has to be some technology, this can be a very good thing. So this is how we have a shift from the conventional industrial pattern of manufacturing to a smart manufacturing or data-driven manufacturing in the era of digital economy. In every phase, you have data collection, right? So if you look at how the smartphone manufacturers are doing, or how Google is giving you suggestions on what you are going to type next when you are typing an email, because it has taken the data from the end consumer. So they have this data collection, data processing, and data analysis mechanism, and they can monetize it, because they can actually sell this data if they want, with all these due privacy concerns and everything. Okay, even in your manufacturing, every step in manufacturing can generate the data, and that can be used to improve the performance, to improve the end user experience. And one important aspect of this, even if you are not a student of economics, we talk about demand and supply, right? And in economics, and I have taken this from one of the blogs of Mr. Bill Gates, you all know him, right? The fundamental shift here is that, in conventional economy, what we say is that an economy is balanced economy where you are able to get the sweet equilibrium point between demand and supply. Okay, so there is a quantity, per quantity there is a price. If there is a supply, there is a demand. So demand goes down, supply goes up, and has to be an equilibrium. But there is a fundamental assumption which not many people talk about, which is total cost of production is proportional to total quantity of supply. Suppose you are manufacturing a car. Okay, there are some initial R&D activity, but however you automate, you have to build that physical car, right? So for every car, there has to be an equal amount of energy being spent. So every unit will have a proportional. So with the number of units, maybe it will come to a saturation, but it is very, very difficult for not easy for everybody to scale up. Able to scale up, what happens is your cost of production is linearly increasing with your quantity of production, until and unless you are able to do a massive parallelization. You will see that in many cases you will say, okay, no, I can't build this much because the cost will be too high. If I have to build them, I have to build them in bulk. If there is no demand in the market in bulk, I can't build just one. That is the assumption. In digital economy, it does not hold true. And that is something all of us have to appreciate. Why? There is a famous book called Capitalism Without Capital. We are heading to a new kind of capitalism where your profit, your OPEX, your CAPEX is not essentially linearly proportional to the amount of capital you spent. To explain this a little bit more, you have already got copy and paste, right? So copying a document is not that much of effort, unlike earlier. I mean, if you remember, earlier days, I have seen in one of the Bengali movie on Michael Madhusudan. So he was actually narrating the poetry, and there were at least 10 pandits sitting and copying, everybody writing what Madhusudan is saying. So there is a scalability factor. It does not scale much. So then can you make 100 copies? And it becomes huge effort, right? But with copy paste, the effort is minimal. And then you switch to clouds. Just imagine Play Store. One developer sitting at one corner somewhere in the world, writing an application, an app, and putting it in a Play Store, and then that is done. The end consumers are wasting or spending their own bandwidth, are spending their own time, are spending their own electricity to download them. We have all done this, but just try to think from this aspect. How much capital has been invested to reach out to millions of users of that app? There is just one-time capital investment, just to build one piece of software. So that is why these days, these companies will see this total shift in trend. The car, the person dealing with cars does not own, the company dealing with cars does not own a car. Uber or Ola. The company dealing with groceries does not have its own grocery shop. This is a new kind of ideation that has enabled digital economy, and this is something that is going to stay and increase in post-pandemic era. As I said, post-pandemic, we are doing nothing new. Only thing is that we were lethargic, we were unacceptable, or we were unaccepting to few of the ideas, or we were delaying deployment of some of the ideas. And now the time has come, we have to expedite our efforts. Okay. So some of the technology drivers, Internet of Things, because when you talk about data generation, you have to do Internet of Things. I want to just briefly touch what is so special about Internet of Things, because we already have Internet. So what is Internet of Things? Now this graph or this arrow is actually a timeline of how Internet has evolved over the years. But what we see to summary is that HTTP is the protocol that has been used, IP protocol, IP version 4 has been used, and we, the human being. So who, even if you're going to Amazon, it is you, it is a seller, a human being who is uploading some data, and it is a human being, a buyer, who is browsing the data and placing an order. If you talk about social internet or the social websites, so here also everybody is a human being, right? There is a friend who is updating about some information, and maybe I'm watching that information. So the end consumer and end producer of data, if we can say so, are essentially human beings, and that has a certain usage pattern. But if you want to make the world smart, it is no longer human being, it is no longer human user, what you are trying is that your inanimate world, the soil in the field, the plant, your bed, your coffee machine, your AC, your refrigerator, your everything has to be smart. That means now the inanimate world, it is no more the animate world. It is the inanimate world that is going to be the contributor of data and consumer of data. What do I mean by inanimate data or the inanimate world? Essentially, you will deploy sensors. Small sensors of thousands of types, sensors giving you thousands of parameters. Just imagine one smartphone contains so many sensors, proximity sensors, gyroscope, accelerometer, right? Light sensor. So many sensors are there, GPS. So many sensors are there in just one smartphone. So we're talking about sensors, and that causes a big shift in the data pattern, because what if there is a fire and suddenly all the sensors start pouring in data in the network? Now, in this case, we are not talking about streaming a huge data, but thousands data clogging the network together. What about the security? And what about in a dense jungle, you have put a sensor? Who would guarantee that the battery will not drain out too frequently? What about the energy? What about the protocol or the communication mechanism that we'll put here? Now, let me tell you one design consideration. If you put a sensor, be assured that, and if the sensor is going to communicate, just forget about sensors. If you are using a smartphone and if it has to communicate, bulk of the energy will be drained out. 50% of the energy will be drained out while communicating. Why? It depends on the protocol that you are using. The protocol decides how many numbers your physical layer has to crunch, your circuits have to crunch. The more number of data, more amount of data it has to crunch to send in the air, the more energy it will drain out. How can I make this step efficient? That is why you will see IoT protocols coming in these days, MQTT, COAP, QAP, and all these things. Okay. And what about security? When you are talking about environment getting smart, see, when a human is putting a data, the human puts its intelligence on whether he or she wants to give that data or not. But when a sensor is giving away the data, the sensor has to be aware that whether that data can be delivered or not. You have some ailment, you have some illness. Your body sensor is giving out that data. What if somebody whom you don't want to disclose is deciphering that data? Or what if you are the end consumer of the data, maybe an insurance company or maybe an app, is actually taking some information out of you which you don't want to disclose? And I'm telling you, many of the applications which seek permission of your phone microphone, of the microphone of your smartphone, actually steal the voice samples now and then if you have forgotten to close that data manually. Many games these days will seek permission to use your microphone. Many apps will seek permission to use your microphone, where that app at least apparently does not have anything to do with audio. They are going to take a chance that when you have forgotten to close that app, you have just left your smartphone because you are not able to hear anything, right? You know that I'm not hearing anything, so no audio and nothing is working. but that server happening at your home. Okay, so we have to be very careful. And when I were talking about sensors, then comes the standardization. There has to be a common language. These days, you will see that
Hello, sir. We can't hear you. Ovijan, sir, can you hear me? Ovijan, sir, we can't hear your voice.
Sir, we can't hear you.
hello.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, there was an outage of network suddenly.
Okay, okay.
Yeah. So let me just go back. Can you see my screen?
So please rotate it. Yes, sir. Now it's fine.
I have. Okay. So one of the enabler of this is 5G. Now, before I go to 5G, what I'll talk about is, because 5G is the promise on which all this digital economy is banking on heavily. So what is this G? G means a new standard, new global standard that is going to give you more. I mean, till 4G, it was you had more speed, more functionality, more spectrum, etc. So it was always a more and more fat pipe, right? But with 5G, what we have got is, let me increase this. 5G has really come up with an umbrella of technologies where you have got human to human, human to machine, machine to machine, IoT, from IoT to streaming. Everything has been covered in the 5G. Essentially, all softwareization of network and many things that has come up in last one decade since 2009, 10, all these concepts have been clubbed in 5G. Apart from that, there has been a huge boost in the available network. But at the same time, 5G network is going to be highly dense so that there will be a higher reachability, because the frequency that 5G is talking about does not have enough penetration into the concrete walls. So there has to be a huge kind of dense network, and that gives you the questions related to privacy, security, and also health. So these are all open areas of research that you need to deal with. Now, I want to show you one interesting thing that I happened to witness in Valencia last year in the Global 5G Forum. Now you see there are two persons sitting, two persons standing on the podium. Now one person is a holographic representation of somebody sitting at least 5 kilometers away. So you can see in the diagram over here, so there is one person sitting somewhere and his holographic image is being displayed at the conference venue in real time. And the person standing in the conference venue is actually interacting with the holographic image. So this is holographic video chat, what we have observed in sci-fi, what we have observed in Star Trek movies. Now, if I tell you who is the person, real person in this, can anybody take a guess? Whether is it the green or is it the black? Anybody can take a great
The green
guess?
one. Green one.
Yes, yes. The green one is actually the person sitting somewhere 5 kilometers away in the office of Orange Telecom, okay? Orange Telecom Valencia. And the person in black is the one standing on the stage. And believe me, this person in green is actually roaming around on the stage, and the person in black is actually talking to him as if they are standing there. Okay. So this is something I have seen in my eyes. Okay. Or through my eyes. And this is what 5G is going to make possible. Although there are several miles to go, because this was just 5 kilometers between, there was a line of sight communication between the conference venue and the Orange Telecom office. But this is the beginning, and this is showing the possibility where we are heading to. And you never know that when this will become a reality, right? So these are the possibilities, and this is real business 4.0 that we are going to happen. This is how the conference in future are going to happen. Maybe there will be the person talking will just reach to the image of the person who will walk around the premises, right? So to summarize, digital economy has got IoT, which is the data generator, and distribution and generation, who is going to mediate? It is the 5G technologies, and all of them are going to be put to data centers. So in India, I'm expecting that a huge data center economy will develop very soon. So, and to best of my knowledge, in Silicon Valley in Newtown, already there are 2 companies who are actually building data centers over there. Okay, so that is another kind of activity that we are going to see across India. Even in states of Bihar, they are developing data center. I know this because I had to be in a meeting where representatives from the IT departments were talking about these initiatives. So there has to be these data centers. There has to be mobile edge, which with the edge that will be part of the base stations at the microcells, who will have the intelligence. For example, if you are doing a surveillance operation, it is not that all the video will be going across the network to the remote place. It may happen that there is an intelligence sitting at the base station itself, and that is what 5G promises, and that is called a mobile edge. What it will do is it will just run an AI and try to see that whether there is something noticeable that needs to be communicated to the end consumer, and only if there is something noticeable, it will raise an event. So that is how it will minimize the traffic flow across the network. So plenty of it is completely open space. Plenty of innovations can happen over mobile edge computing. So if you combine all of them, comes automation and robotics, right? Because robots need to communicate. Tomorrow you will see a warfare based on robotics. Okay, so maybe the soldiers are basically at that time probably there. I'm just saying in a funny note, but it may be a reality. So the guys who are very very smart in running these video games, okay, joysticks and all these things, they may be called in the army, because the soldiers are all be robots being driven by joysticks. And that's a possibility because mankind would, after all, want to reduce the loss of human lives, right? So there is one hand IoT, because robots you will sense through robots. Robots will form the avatar to sense the remote environment. There will be 5G. There will be mechanics, to build those robots, to make them fault resilient, plus cloud and machine learning. All if you combine all of them, there is automation and robotics. And mind you, automation is not artificial intelligence, but artificial intelligence is definitely an automation. Okay. And last thing that I want to touch upon is blockchain technologies. Okay. So blockchain, without going into much detail, blockchain is about building trust across internet, a trust in an undeniable form. Okay. A trust that you cannot deny or you cannot breach. Now, you see, now in India, people are so concerned that how this 2021, how people are going to vote, because they have to go and stand in line. What about social distancing? There are countries like Estonia, small countries, who have already started to build these blockchain technologies for voting, okay, to create such an infrastructure. So even in some governments, including Telangana government and even West Bengal government, are talking about digitizing the land records such that records cannot be forged and they will be kept in blockchain, because the land forgery. So a single piece of land are sold multiple times. That happens. That kind of forgery happens if there is a blockchain. So every entity can be accessed just one time. So without dealing with that previous record, you cannot change or alter the state of that thing. So this blockchain is definitely going to be a point of interest, although there are plenty of concerns regarding how feasible it would be, what will be the monetization model, and whether current internet is able to handle blockchain in its true sense. And what happens if there is quantum computing? I have not included quantum computing in this, but if quantum computing becomes just as a real thing as our PC, then blockchains will have a problem. And these days, there has been, especially in Russia and some part of the world, researchers have already started working on how blockchains can be made quantum safe. The reason is the cryptographic or public key cryptography using blockchain is easily breakable in quantum, which is very difficult to break in classical computing that we use today. But in quantum computing, because quantum computers work in the number of possibilities, and there are several algorithms, Shor algorithm, etc., which can reduce the time to compute the polynomial keys that are being generated, right? So these are kind of some trends that I have essentially taken from mainly from the findings of the United Nations and some of the Gartner and other researches. So machines are going to be the new normal, and just don't think that machine is going to replace human being. No, the idea is that machine is going to augment human being, right? So where you can't reach today, the mind you can't reach today to rescue, machine will reach and rescue. The operation, the kind of precision that you can't do today, machine will do it for you. The kind of the patient that you are not able to attain today, machines will help you tomorrow. Okay, so just stay safe, think about this technology. You have, so whatever I have said, maybe you have already heard about these things, you have already read about these things, but I just tried to put a different perspective in all of them. And if this can churn out new kind of ideas, research methodologies, new kind of course designing of your academic curriculum that will serve some of the purpose of this talk. And so hope you all stay safe during this pandemic, wear masks and use sanitizers and use the basic health norms that our elders used to teach us from our childhood. And with that, I would like to thank you for your cooperation and for listening for so long patiently. So with that, I would like to end the talk. If you have any questions, I'm ready to take them.
Okay. Thank you, sir, for being with us and share your knowledge and thought. I would like to request all the participants, if you have any question, just unmute your mic and one by one you can ask the question. We'll send you the feedback form meanwhile. Thank you.
I have a question, ma'am.
Okay. Yeah.
Can I ask ma'am?
Yes, sir. Hello. Obhijan, sir.
Yes, please.
Can I ask ma'am?
Obhijan, sir. Yes.
Yes, ma'am. My question is how robotics or artificial intelligence will impact on digital economy. Means in coming. Hello.
Yes. So your question
Can
is
I guess? How robotics or artificial intelligence will impact digital in India?
See, as I think I have given plenty.
And digital economy, sir, also digital economy, because manpower will be there will be a shortage of manpower.
Yeah. So as I said, that robots are going to augment, and don't think that robots that you see in sci-fi are the only kind of robots you can have. You can have small bots which can roam around, and I just give you some of the uses. And now these are real at this moment. Although in foreign countries there has been a lot of research, and we are still dependent on foreign countries in terms of getting the exact hardware and stuff like that. But for example, I give you a situation. I mean, ladies go to I mean, suppose you are going to a supermarket, okay, and you maybe say in Pantaloons or in Big Bazaar or somewhere, okay, and ladies usually go and buy saris and all these things, and they are more particular about the quality of this, and they want to touch. Now, what about tomorrow?
Right,
If you are a very dignified customer in one of the big, I mean, Priya Gopal Vishoy, or say in Sriniketan, whatever. Okay, you are a dignified customer and you have done a subscription. Suppose they have a robot which has just a simple one wheel and a few arms and etc. So you can, as a customer, the lady can log in to that robot. The robot will roam around.
Okay.
And the robot will it is far more different than browsing clothes in Amazon. Okay, it is far more different. You are actually roaming around the store, okay, from counter to counter. And if you have a choice through that robot, so the robot is actually playing your face. The robot is saying, so you are saying through the robot that I want to, can you please get that down? That the shop owner gets that stuff down, and you are able to touch that in real time and feel the quality of the cloth, etc. right? And you can even ask
Right, sir.
that, can you unfold this? So this is a kind of possibility. Now, this is not going to reduce your customer.
Hmm.
And even for safety measures, you will need an attendant as a precautionary measure.
Hmm.
You will need an attendant who would have to accompany that robot. Okay.
Hmm.
So it is not
Okay.
just replacing replacing someone. It is just enabling
Okay.
a customer who might have
Facility.
skipped
Huh.
to visit your shop is coming to your shop. Okay, and then you can maybe parcel and send it, and there will be digital mechanism to do the exchange of money and all these things. So I'm giving you some. Maybe it may sound hypothetical, but believe me, these are going to be reality in say 5-10 years. These are going to be reality.
Right, right.
So what I'm trying to say is that in every sphere we have to think how digital technology and from the tendency of this consumer, and we already are doing these things from the buying pattern. Are we not sending the advertisements, personalized advertisements? We are doing that these days. I mean, all service providers are doing that. So these things are going to enhance more and more to attract more and more people, and building these kind of technology. Suppose if we have a robot manufacturing industry in India, how many direct and indirect job opportunities will be created, right? So there, every challenge can be transformed into an opportunity. Okay.
Right, sir.
Hello.
Hello.
Yes.
Hello.
Yes.
Priyanka ma'am, can I ask a question to sir?
Yeah, definitely.
Mr. Bhattacharya, are you audible to me? Hello.
Yes, please go ahead.
Actually, I am from a different field. I'm from pharmacy or chemistry field. Okay. So in this pandemic, we are facing a lot of problem during the classes of our students. Mainly, we are doing that by some online classes. Okay. So in case of our field, mainly chemistry and biology, so what are the contribution of that computing industry or industry of robotics about transforming that experiments into some simulation techniques or whatever it is, okay, that will be fruitful for the students and also for the teachers? What will be the contribution? I want to ask.
You have already answered your question. So there will be simulation platforms and all these things these days. I don't have knowledge on what has been done, but I definitely know that there are. Okay. Now, and that gives us actually new opportunities to to explore. In many years, I think about 10 or 20 years back, I read an article of sending smell across internet. Okay, that is not yet a reality. But I want to tell you something. These over-the-top broadcast industry, they are actually doing have put a use case or a requirement in which they want to do a tactile broadcast. For example, the movie, you will, while there's this movie, I mean, just like you see the 70 films and all these things, sitting at your home, using this tactile internet or the internet of touch, you will be able to also touch this thing. And who knows, there may be a smell coming smell being transferred across internet. It is not exactly impossible, but there are some problems at the actuation end. Why I'm talking about smell and touch, all these things are these simulators. They will not be able to give you the smell of the chemical at this point, right? But
Yes.
in a chemistry lab, to create that environment, you need the smell of the chemical. And you also need to touch. So, for example, I have done very little chemistry lab in my school days. So, suppose if you have manganese dioxide, I mean, how does it feel? You need to feel that. So, these are some things that should be taken up by computer science engineers and all these things. Now the pandemic has come in a rush. And as I said, necessity is mother of invention. Definitely, the requirement that you have said, I believe this is the requirement that is going to stay with many of the institutes. So, at best, what they will be doing is they will create social distancing inside the lab and do a time shared basis of work. But that is not a scalable model, because after all, even your public transport is going to change, is going to hamper. The pattern of public transport is also going to change. So yes, definitely, this is a use case that computer engineers and application developers, they have to think of, and these are the real requirements that are going to fast track the innovation. But if you ask me that is there a solution at this point, unfortunately I don't have any answer. I can search and let you know.
Actually, sir, I want to request you from my point of view that this is the high time for that IT industries and all the robotics industries that they have to contribute something in this
See,
era of pandemic, because of as for our concern, like a teacher, that we are facing a lot of problem, because these type of things will be hampering the students study and all their syllabus curriculum day by day. So in the university is not able to give some solution about that. We are searching here and there in YouTube and whatever it is, but we are not finding some solution. So I have requesting just to you that
yes,
like a great
see the
industry
problem. Let me tell you the problem. I have been working on telepresence robots since about 1.5 years.
yes,
The
sir.
problem is, in all these cases, you can write the software and all the stuff, but there is a hardware involvement.
Yes,
This pandemic has actually unveiled many of our shortcomings that we are not aware of. Uh, just to have a robot in our lab, it just got delayed by more than 6 months, because it was coming from across the seas, and everything got stopped. Okay.
okay,
So as long as we have this dependency, see, one pity that we have with the IT industry, and let me tell this, and it should remain between you and me. I also, being fundamentally from IT industry, I have no this thing hesitation in accepting one fact is that the IT industry has dealt with mostly, I mean, the bulk of the revenue has come from kind of non-niche technological areas, if I can say so. Okay, it has been more in dealing with business problems. I mean, building the business ecosystem infrastructure, the core R&D, and building this niche kind of technologies. They have not really pumped up over these 20 or 30 days. And if I tell you, and that's a sad reality, and we are all responsible for this, the academia, the industry, and I must say even the government, everybody is responsible for this. The fact is, if you talk about IT boom that started back in 1998 with Y2K problem, and that is when everybody started to talk about IT, and we all ran after easy money at that point of time, because that scaled up our export to a never before level. Okay, we became a big exporter of IT software. But if I tell you, in last 20 years, so if I start from 2000, this is 2020. In last 20 years, if you see in Silicon Valley, there has been a Facebook that has come up, and Amazon has come up, Google has come up. How many such companies has come up in India? Although we are a giant, we call ourselves a giant IT exporter. Even there is an Alibaba in China. Okay, and a lot of companies have popped up in China, though they are not known for software. But despite being big, because our students have run after easy money, and we can't blame them. Everybody comes from a middle class family. Everybody needs money. Everybody needs wealth. Teachers have concentrated on how everybody should get a job in an IT company, and so everybody have studied because they had ultimately they had to crack an interview and get to a job. Even I myself have done that. Now, and I can't blame the teachers also, because they have to finally sustain in the academic institutions. They have to also attract students, so they have to also do this thing. Then where goes the research, and not only the research, where goes the incubation of new ideas, and where goes the ecosystem to scale that up so that it can be properly commercialized and paid to the indigenous market? Government has a big role to play in that sense, and not only government can't do everything. I know government has done a lot in putting fund, giving these things. We also have to have some kind of accountability, and we have lacked that. Let us accept it. Okay, and this pandemic has actually bared many of such faults on the whole system. No one as an individual is responsible, but something has lacked in the whole system. Now, coming back to your question, there may be protocols may be written. I mean, softwares can be written to create simulations and all these things, but the kind of infrastructure, the kind of application that we are talking about, that the student sitting in his computer with small pieces of sensors and actuators, he or she would be able to smell or get the actual environment of the lab. It is not possible. It is not possible because we don't have that capacity to build such things. Even if these are created in some very niche labs, these are not built to a level that it can be scaled up to reach to your college. That is my feeling. I may be wrong, but that is what I feel is a reality.
Okay, sir. Thank you very much.
Okay.
Thanks.
Thank you, sir, for being with us and share your knowledge. Now, I would like to thank all the participants for attending the session. I would like to request Professor Chandrima Singha Roy, Assistant Professor of BCA Department, to share few words. Thank you.
Thank you, Priyanka ma'am. Am I audible?
Yes, ma'am. Yes. Yes.
Well, very good afternoon to everyone. Ladies and gentlemen, and my dear friends and dear students, I would like to extend my humble gratitude to our eminent speaker, Mr. Abhijan Bhattacharya, for such mesmerizing and informative presentation. Sir, I really hope in future also we shall definitely meet through the digital platform, where again we shall get acquainted and would get guided by your expertise and knowledge, which undoubtedly are immensely beneficial for our students as well as the research community. My sincere thanks to our respected Vice Principal Sir, Mr. Surojit Gun, and our HOD, Mrs. Priyanka Kundu ma'am, for enlightening the program by their presence. My heartfelt thanks to College Authority, the organizing body, and our team members who worked hard behind the screen, and also Mr. Debobroto Barik and Mr. Aripto Kundu for their stupendous effort. Today, after seeing such indomitable enthusiasm and interest of the participants, it's my sincere request to the organizer for arranging more such brilliant and useful program in future for the mass. And last but not the least, a big thanks to all the participants for making this event a grand successful one. However, one gentle reminder to our participants, please fill the feedback form to get the participation certificate. And that's it for today. With a positive note, I end the session, hoping for a better tomorrow. Stay fit and safe. Thank you all.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.